So the last thing we need to do is we need to create our graph. So you'll remember doing that 2 weeks ago. So the first thing we'll do is bring up the graph tool. It's right here, column graph, and select here. Draw out the space that we want the graph to occupy, and this should look pretty familiar to you. So for data, in this first column, I'm going to add the names. I'll add zombies, and in the next column, comets, in the next, aliens, and then bad sequels. There we go. And then here I'm just going to add some arbitrary numbers. So I'll say there's a 100% chance of there being a bad sequel within the next year. Risk of aliens, let's put that at 20%. Comets, let's put that at 15%. And zombies, well, there's a pretty good chance of a zombie apocalypse. Let's make that 50%. There we go. So I can apply that, and it gives me this graph, which should look familiar to you. And so now if I close my data window, save my graph data, and I select Object, Graph, Graph Type, I can make those adjustments that I like to see. So for example, I can turn it into a bar graph rather than a column graph. Select the tick marks to be none for the value axis, and for the category axis the same, none. And click OK. And there we go. So obviously I need to do a little bit of scaling of this. So remember, we had to use the scale tool. So I'm going to uniformly scale it to 75%. It's a little bit small, but it'll do. Okay, so we've got zombies, comets, aliens, and bad sequels. Now the reason I wanted to use the graph tool again was to show you how you could use a sliding graph in order to incorporate a design like this, one in which part of the column or bar slides, and then it includes just a tip at the end, and that tip never changes size. So the other thing I wanted to show you was how to incorporate percentages. So if we go back to our graph, actually I am going to make that a little bit bigger. Make that 110. That's better. Okay, so that fits in there nicely. I think what I'll do is let's create the artwork for this column. So when you're creating artwork, you need to create something that is approximately the same size. So what I mean by that is I want to create a column that is approximately the same width as the column I'm already using. Otherwise it has to scale and it starts to look a bit funny. So I'm going to select that nice blue color for that. And then I'm going to create another little square to sit on top of that. I'll just make sure it's the same size. So holding down the Shift key, I'll create a square here, and then I'll move it up to the top. Okay, and we'll color that red. So we'll match that with the end of this. You can see it's even still a slight bit larger. And of course, if we want to round the edges of it, you'll remember that you select each of these tools and you can selectively round edges, so you don't have to round all 4. There we go. And now if I want to have the percentages displayed, I use the percentage figure 0, 0. And that is a formula that Illustrator understands as something that should be converted to a numeric frequency. So I'm going to use Libertad again, regular, make it 10 points, maybe even less than that to fit in here. And the other thing I want to do is I want to make sure that my text is always centered. So I'm going to use the center line paragraph feature so that no matter what numeric value shows up here, it always shows up in the center of that shape. Okay, and I think I'll also color that white so we can see it more readily. The last thing I need to do is group these elements. Command G is the shortcut for grouping. And now what I want to do is use the line tool. There it is, hiding under my grid segment tool. I'm going to use the line tool and I'm going to draw a straight line across the point where I want the sliding to end and the cap to start. And I'm going to take that point, Window, or rather View, Guides, Make Guides, and convert that line into a guide. Window, Guides, Show Guides. I want to see it. Okay. So now I'm going to take this and turn it into a design. So I'll select it. There we go. Object, Graph, Design, New Design, and I'll call that design Bar. So I've created a new design called Bar. And now if I go down to my graph and I select it, Object, Graph, Column, I can choose Bar as my artwork and ask that it slide. Click OK, and there we have it. Now you'll notice that all of my type is sideways. I could change that by rotating it in the artwork, and then it would appear right side up. So finally, there are a few things we can do to tidy this up. For example, I've drawn a rounded rectangle both around the chart and the emergency hotline just to give them a little bit more weight, visual weight. I've also changed the typeface of emergency hotline to match emergency preparedness at the top. I've reduced the opacity, or at least the weight and color, of both the vertical and horizontal axis of the chart, and just adjusted things slightly spatially. But that ends our Media Lab for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to submit to the Dropbox.